Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Ives. This is their part number 101, US15 is what it is, or CUS15. 101 is the hinge. The C means that it's carded. All that is a reference to is the packaging. It's on a cardboard back. It's carded. The hinge is in a US15 finish, which tells us that it is a satin nickel type finish. Doesn't tell us the base material, just tells us it's going to be a satin nickel finish is what this manufacturer would call it. The hinge is priced per hinge. When you buy one, you're not getting two hinges. You're getting one hinge and its screws. If you were to need five, for whatever reason, we would cut one of these open and take a hinge out and send it to you. The reasoning is the factory doesn't offer any alternative packaging for these smaller series of hinges, so they're only sold in multiples of 2 from the factory as a result. We will send you an odd number, however. Probably have to work with us to get that entered as an order. Now, what is the 101? Well, the Soss line of hinges is a very elegant and very mature, is the word I think I'm looking for, hinge in the marketplace when it comes to concealed hinges. There are others who do this kind of stuff. There are certainly others who manufacture small concealed hinges. The name Soss is utterly synonymous with a concealed hinge like this. There are other people who make concealed hinges, large ones that are meant for full-size doors that are several hundreds of pounds, that give additional features over what the Soss hinge does. Soss is staunchly committed to their original design that they have here. Okay, a really elegant hinge. I like them a lot. I've used them. I've mortised for them. I've machined for them, is what I mean to say. I've installed them. I've performed troubleshooting on them. I have worked with contractors designing custom doors where they want to use a Soss hinge and need to have it verified whether or not it will work. In particular, adding applied material to the face of a door on the pull side to make sure that that door is going to swing out and around. Determining how many hinges you need, what size hinge, what's the door thickness, what's the weight, and all that kind of stuff. And the Soss hinge is elegant in practically every scenario. When it comes to just hanging a door, it's concealed. You don't see it. What I recall, someone told me, and I don't remember, many, many years ago, that the statement of the, Henry Soss or whoever it was, someone at the factory that may have been the inventor, may have been the grandson of the inventor, I don't recall. But the client said, the person at Soss said, I don't care how heavy the door is. Just keep throwing Soss hinges at it. And while, if you have a 1,000-pound door, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to throw enough hinges at it to hang such a door. But the fact of the matter is, a result of the design of this hinge with these laminated plates and the 101 is not a good example of this because this is just for a cabinet door. The design of this makes it incredibly capable at carrying heavy loads. So when you get into full-size doors, Soss is a great option. So I said practically every scenario it's elegant for. Where you have to watch out for is if you have overhead concealed or overhead stops and holders, surface mount or concealed, you have to be mindful that the vertical axis of pivoting on your Soss hinge is not like a typical butt hinge, full mortise, or a pivot 3/4 offset, where the vertical axis of pivoting, your plumb line, that doesn't move at all. As the door swings, opens, and closes, that vertical axis of pivoting, the center line of your hinge axis, your pivoting axis, doesn't move. Not the case with Soss. If you focus on just that tip, that riveted tip right there, as I cycle the door from what would be in a cross section, a closed position, to an open position, you can see that that does not rotate. It doesn't stay stationary, and that it would certainly be elliptical, okay, if we were to plot that out. that has to be taken into account when not only ordering and installing overhead stops, holders, stops, friction, or holders, but it has to be taken into account when you are pricing those items, because very often the manufacturer will require a special template to manufacture those overhead units to work compatibly with the Soss. So you'll order you'll know that you've got Soss hinges and you're dealing with concealed Rixson overhead door stops, high-end residential, and you'll order your Rixsons. And if you don't specify your hanging method, you're going to get a template that's not accurate for what you're doing. If you specify Soss hinges like a 218, you're going to probably pay more for those than you expect because the factory is going to do a special template on those. So be mindful to get all that specified ahead of time. Almost elegant in every condition. They do make a spring closer version. They've got a 218 IC, a 220 IC. Have had people use those, install those, and I have heard on more than one occasion that people don't like their spring closer. So they don't really have a closer that is necessarily 100% loved by the general, by the specifier, designer, architect, owner, installer. So be mindful of that. You're probably going to want to use a traditional closer. Really nothing special about that traditional closer to take into account of this. So now what I was about to say was this Soss type hinge doesn't really matter if you're dealing with a tiny 101 or a really big 220 hinge. That's just a range of the sizes. The logic of prepping this material is all the same. And they're really easy to install. They're easy to mortise. They do take, if it's your first time, they do take some studying, but after you get the template out and digest the drawing, and they have a document called Nomograph, which you might want to start with, which we'll get into at the end of this video. But if you've already been given the hinges and given the door and say, here, make it all work, okay, not a big deal. There is a cut sheet, and the bottom line is, someone needs to determine which hinge. We'll get to that at the end of the video. There is a cut sheet for this, and it's really a technical drawing of the hinge and tells you everything that you need to know about this. So first of all, sold per hinge, priced per hinge. This can be used in a metal or wood application. However, the fasteners they give us are just for a wood application. If you need machine screws for these, reach out to us and we will request machine screws from the factory when these are ordered. I can't think of the last time I did a small Soss hinge in a metal application. The big stuff, sure. Full-size hollow metal doors and frames, sure. Not anything small. So as a rule, you're going to get wood screws. If you need machine screws, let us know. We'll work with you. They do give a couple of pre-drill hole sizes for your 5x3/4, and they use what is a drill numbered size. You're familiar with drill bits: 1/16, 3/16, ½ inch, 3/8, etc. You're probably familiar with metric. Okay, great. Then there's the drill number size, and the drill number size is really the woodworker, in my opinion, the woodworker's preferred set to use because the incremental change between drills are very fine, and you will end up achieving just the right size hole with a numbered drill set. And they will give you a numbered drill set. Why the difference in these sizes? Why a 53 for a softwood and why a 47 for a hardwood? Why would that be the case? The reason that's the case is because a 53 is a smaller hole. So in a softwood application, they really want you to drill a smaller hole because a softwood, you don't want to say that it is soft, and soft or hard is really a reference to the species of wood. However, in this application, you can think of going into pine as a soft wood versus going into maple as a hard wood. The 53 is a smaller size, and because that pine is going to be more is going to be more it will be more agreeable to running something into it. They want a little smaller size hole because it's going to expand a little bit around your thread. And if you're drilling into a hardwood species, oak, mahogany, well, some mahogany, African, sapele, obviously maple, birch, cherry, walnut, you're going to want a little larger hole, is the bottom line, because you don't want to strain that screw getting into the material that you're installing it into. So that's why you've got two different sizes. To have the proper size bit is crucial with this. A 53 is like 0.06. I have a chart here. I have a partial chart. It's not quite a 1/16 of an inch, but very close to that. A 48 is going to be a size that's over 0.07 inch. So they're different, and you'll want to adhere to that. That would be my suggestion. If you're doing one, I would take a caliper and take the root diameter and be right in that range. But if you don't have a numbered drill set, you'd certainly want one if you deal more than occasionally with fine carpentry with finished hardware. So the extended description talks about the pre-drill hole sizes. They do mention a 440 by half for a machine screw. So if you do need some machine screws, that would be the one that would be normally apparently supplied. So there's a link below this video to a document called Cut Sheet, the cut sheet that's there, and that's going to allow us to review all of the dimensional properties of the hinge. So we won't beleaguer all of those points, but let's just take a look at the overall height. 1 11/16, they say. Yeah, I'd say you're spot on, right on. The width of the body itself, they're coming up with 3/8 of an inch. Right on. Okay, 3/8. A depth of the body. I see the mortise size at 15/30 seconds. Which is, going to be just slight on 7/16. So this is coming in right at about 7/16 of an inch is going to be the overall body depth. My caliper tells me 0.456. Oh, forgive me. 0.456. Yeah. I was thinking 15/30 seconds. I had 13/30 seconds stuck in my head. So that's 30,000 shy of a half inch. This hinge measures 0.455, so that's a really good mortise depth. So the bottom line is, how would you go about mortising this? I think it would be super easy. A mortise, because it is. If it's your first time, it may not seem that way because there's lots of dimensions here, but it really boils down to something simple. The width of the hinge, they give it 3/8, and my caliper tells me it's 0.383. So, yeah. The way that I was at one time exposed to thinking about how to mortise wood doors, wood frames, is to think about the different steps that you work on in a operation of machining. We're going to have the first thing called the body, and then the plate. The body is the part that's inside the door or the frame. The part that you don't see. The plate is a representation of the width, length, and thickness of the exposed part. So in our hinge here, we're going to have a body prep for the body of the unit here, which is going to be the mortise depth and then the length, which they give at, they say it's 7/8 of an inch. They don't tell us what a mortise height should be for the body, and that's why the caliper is the best friend of the carpenter. my caliper is telling me it's 0.875, so yeah, 7/8. So if I was mortising for this, I would be at 3/8 wide. I would be at that, 15-30 seconds deep, and then I would be at my overall length of 7/8. I'd probably make it, 30 thousandths heavy on that. Being mindful to avoid the screw holes. Stay far away from that, but if I'm only 15 thousandths over the body, I'm okay. So I would do my tiny little prep there. Then I would reset my 3/8 wide 2-flute carbide router to go the overall length of 1 11/16 at the thickness of the hinge itself, the plate portion, which I don't see they're giving us here. Oh, they do. It's 7/32 of an inch. So, and they always do. It just takes a moment to find it. My caliper tells me 0.218 thickness. So I would be taking dimensions of the hinge. I would be comparing it against what the paperwork says. I would do a reality check on that, and then I would proceed. So, and Soss does make templates, but your first little prep is that little body. Lift up the depth on your router, then do the plate. You're done. Pre-drill your holes, you're finished. The only thing you need to decide is what's the vertical height to place them at. Industry standard conventions. I'm not a cabinet maker. I would not be overly concerned with it because you're probably hanging a relatively light door. A number of inches from the top, make it equal at the bottom, sort of scenario. If you're doing more than one because you have something tall, I'd go in the middle. I might follow standard conventions for a standard size door in that sort of regard. Now, the important part that we've not talked about is the only other thing that's important on this. It's all important, but what must be observed is the dimension of 3/32. In the large drawing, left and top of center, 3/32, which is the pull side of the door. When your hinge is opened, it's going to be the pull side of the door, the face of the door to the hinge. If your dimension becomes greater than that, your hinge, you're very likely not to open very far because you're going to have too much of the inside corner of the door or the jamb that your door is going to bump into over in this area. So you can have it less, but don't exceed that amount, 3/32. Now, how to decide what hinge to use, your first decision that you need to make is how thick is the door? Okay. Now, it says minimum material thickness is 1/2 inch on this, on the 101. Okay. So, now let's move on to other important information on this hinge. Mortising it is just typical carpentry work. Well, it's finished carpentry work in my opinion, or cabinet maker work. I'm not sure the title, or a wood shop. So the drawing that's in the extended description gives you maybe a cleaner perspective on everything by applying a letter designation to the sizes. There is also a video produced from Soss. I don't know how many years old that is, but certainly as valid today as it was day one. The product line hasn't really changed for this hinge at all. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Soss products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the usage chart that they call nomograph. And if you would please open that document up, we can take a look at it. That chart is in the full line catalog and gives you basically all of the information that you need for working on working with Soss hinges for your application. What do you see? You see a column of width and then a column of weight. You see a row of minimum door thickness. So if you're dealing with 1/2 inch, you're going to automatically see you're dealing with a 101 or a 100 series hinge. But as you plot your 2 points for width and height, you then will draw that line to the nomograph and then draw a straight line, and you'll have the quantity that you require. So a very typical application would see us with a 36-inch door that's going to weigh 125 pounds. And if you were to plot those 2 points, you're going to easily find the weight, the quantity of hinges necessary. And as we plot those 2 points out, we're going to easily see that we're going to draw a line over to, minimum door thickness, 1.75 inches. Okay, so, we have a couple of options. We can use a 218. We can even use a 220. But there'd be no reason to use that 220 because it is just simply, that's a hinge that's going to be meant for a heavier door, no doubt. It's more expensive. It's unnecessary. Now, the trouble that you have with the quantity of hinges that you might be recommended to use is don't follow that for your doors necessarily, because if you had a 125-pound door and you could see that it was a quantity 2 hinges for the 218, your door manufacturer's guidelines are not telling you to use 2 hinges. They're telling you likely to use 3, maybe even more. And what you would certainly do in that regard is to follow the industry or the convention's standard, not only for the door supplier, but for the industry. And the door supplier is going to base their standards on industry standards. So typical, commercial door construction is going to tell us 2 hinges for door heights up to 60 inch. Then for every 30 inch after that, add another hinge. So if you have a 7-foot door, 3 hinges is what's going to be required. You have an 8-foot door, you're going to need 4. And the nomograph could certainly be not be improved because they literally list the industry standard convention. Every door should be provided with at least 1 hinge for every 30 inches in height or portion thereof, etc., etc., etc. So it is the governing document when you need to determine what hinge, how many, based on your application. And that is in the full line catalog as well. Relatively easy to machine. Once you do it the first time, you're set up. You may want to go through the catalog and look at their templates. If you have more than a few of these to do, you're probably going to want to just buy the template. You don't have to. You can make your own. I've never bought their template. I've made my own. The problem with making your own is it takes time. And while you'll have it forever, so you want to invest the time to make it as good as possible, if you're doing just a few, it may just save yourself the trouble and buy a template when you can. And on your Soss manufacturers fire-rated versions for fire-rated steel doors and frames, and they make the door and frame reinforcements that can be used in the construction of the door and frame. That's easy money. You definitely want to order those from the factory for getting those hinges installed into your doors and frames. If I order custom hollow metal, I'm quite sure that the custom hollow metal door manufacturer is not making their own reinforcements. They're ordering them from the factory. Anyway, any questions? Oh, finishes. This is going to be available in different finishes. The 101 can be done in an oil-rubbed bronze lacquered, 10BL, US10BL. US14 is a bright nickel. US15 satin nickel. US19 is a black. US26 polished chrome. US26D satin chrome. US3 polished brass. US4 satin brass. US5 antique brass. Any questions on the 101 or any other Soss product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.